Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After breaking up with the rich young master, all my resources were cut off because of a remark from his crush. I had to drink to the point of bleeding to find a way out at the actress award ceremony. I was only worthy of pouring wine for Richard at the table in front of everyone. Richard threw the wine-filled goblet at me. "Regretting it now?" he asked. I fought off dizziness, raised my ring finger and softly said, "Mr. Richard, I'm married." They say Richard went crazy that night. I saw Richard again at the actress award ceremony. Smiling elegantly on the red carpet was Richard's crush, Nancy. While sitting in the least noticed corner, I couldn't help but notice Nancy's radiance. Everyone knew Nancy had Richard's support, and everyone understood that I, Anna, was the laughingstock in Richard's eyes. Lost in thought while gazing at the stage, a bodyguard-like figure blocked my view. "Miss Anna, Richard wants to see you." I involuntarily flinched and raised my eyes slowly. A pallid tone, undeniable command. It wasn't an invitation but an order. I forced a smile. "All right." The day after leaving Richard, all my resources were cut off, turning me from a glamorous star into a street mouse anyone could step on. Everyone had 2 words to describe me: bad luck. I lived in darkness for 2 months. When I saw Richard, I wasn't as flustered as I thought. As always, he was the center of attention wherever he stood in his dark suit, aloof. Seeing me, Richard frowned, sneered, and gestured playfully. "You poor." Our eyes met. I instinctively flinched, then smiled calmly. I stepped forward as he commanded. The next moment, Richard spilled the wine I poured all over the floor. Filthy. His smile felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. Everyone could see it was a blatant humiliation. I lowered my head, forced a smile, muttered an apology, and continued pouring wine. I didn't dare to look at Richard's expression. Then I heard Richard's mocking voice in my ear. "I bet Anna's been living worse than a dog these days." He caressed the slightly shaking wine glass in my hand. I kept silent. This time, Richard took the wine I poured, the glass swaying gracefully in his elegant hand, a cruel beauty in the staged execution. "Regret it now? You left because you were afraid I'd be crippled in a car accident, right?" He sneered. "It's laughable, Anna. I was fine, but you made the wrong bet." Richard looked at me with disdain, as if I'd pray he could kill at any moment. "Do you regret it, Anna?" His tone was cold but insistent on an answer. Fighting off the dizziness in my head, I smiled as gently as I could. "No regrets. I've never regretted anything. That includes leaving Richard back then." I didn't need to look up to know how terrifying Richard's face must be now. Stubborn. The high goblet smashed into my chest unexpectedly. A dull pain and the coolness of the wine made me shiver. I didn't know how to resist, nor did I want to. Richard looked down at me, his voice mocking. "Anna, regret it and kneel to beg me. Maybe I'll consider it." Before Richard could finish, I cut him off. "I'm sorry." I revealed the right hand I had intentionally avoided. The wedding ring on my ring finger was awkwardly prominent. "Richard, I'm married." As the words fell, I was met with a dreadful silence and a scorching slap on the face. Nancy had appeared at the ceremony's end, giving me a backhanded slap. "Anna, what qualifications do you have to stand in front of Richard?" Before I could regain my senses, Richard's voice sounded in my ears. "What's this madness about?" Surprisingly, the words were directed at Nancy. On the way back to the rental house, I played with the plain ring on my ring finger. A cheap ring bought on a whim had helped me out of a situation. The night air was chilly as I gazed at the starry sky Richard loved. I could never hold any resentment towards Richard. The year of the car accident that took my parents, Richard saw me covered in blood at the scene and insistently said, "I'll take her home to Richard." I might have been just an item whimsically bought by a rich young master, but that sentence became my only redemption in the long nights that followed. From the moment I arrived at Richard's house, I knew he had a childhood crush. I never harbored any fantasies that Richard would fall in love with me. Lost in thought, I awkwardly inserted the rusty key into the lock of the rental house. The intimidating voice of a middle-aged man suddenly sounded. "If the overdue rent isn't paid, don't blame me for taking other measures." The agent's gaze lingered maliciously on my wine-stained chest. I quickly covered it with my hair, speaking humbly. I'm sorry, I'll pay in a couple of days. Can you give me 2 more days? My clenched fist was sweating profusely. I was fully conscious I couldn't fight him. I had no room for retaliation. Pleading was the only option I had. Fine, but no more than 3 days. If it's not paid, you're out. The agent's eyes as he left looked at me like trash. Fine, fine. I immediately bowed compliantly. I thought I had gotten used to this kind of life, yet the feeling was still bitter. I couldn't remember which key it was, almost trying every key on the ring. As I closed the door, a suited hand intercepted my hand's movement firmly. Recognizing the familiar knuckles, my mind went blank instantly. She's not some motherless wretch, she's mine. Who are you? That summer, Richard's fist swung in front of others. A remark, either out of pity or some other emotion, hit my heart precisely. Frozen in place, Richard walked in. He was so tall I had to tilt my head to see him. You left me for that middle-aged man just now. Is this the home he gives you? Anna, where did your dignity go? Cut off guard by those gloomy eyes, I couldn't tell if it was an accusation or mockery. It turned out that Richard mistook the agent from earlier as the husband I had made up out of thin air. Uncertain how to explain, I lightly laughed and steered the conversation away. Is there something you need from me, Richard? Richard remained silent, his narrow eyes fixed on me. I instinctively, nervously hid the plastic ring on my ring finger behind me. Suddenly Richard laughed, a mocking laugh that made my heart race. Of course there's something going on, he said as he approached, cornering me against the study door. Anna, you know betraying me never ends well. His voice was low, and I could see the hatred in his eyes. Ironically, all I wanted was to remember his scent. Anna, your life is in my hands. I never expected you to be such an ungrateful serpent. Since you don't know how to show respect, fine. I'll wait for the day when you kneel before me, gasping for air, begging for mercy. Richard's emotions were running high, almost slamming his arm into the study door. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively grabbed the doorknob. Richard visibly paused, his knuckles turning white. What, not even your middle-aged husband's room is good enough to be seen? I kept my head down, didn't say a word, just held onto the doorknob tightly. How filthy! Richard quickly pushed my hand away from the door and walked off, leaving a parting shot. You and him, neither of you can escape. I stood in front of the study for a long time. I patted my head, got up to close the front door. The smell of smoke outside caught me off guard. I covered my face and coughed. It was Richard. Without much thought, I looked up and blurted out, Is there something you want from me, Richard? Before I could finish my sentence, Richard's eyebrows furrowed in suspicion, looking at me quizzically. You just asked me that question. What are you talking about, Anna? I paused, quickly adjusted my expression, and smiled casually. You must have misheard, Richard. Goodbye then, no need to see me off. Ignoring Richard's scrutinizing gaze, I quickly shut the door. Closing that door felt like securing myself in my safe house forever. The door Richard never opened was my rare redemption in this world. Behind that door lay everything about Richard. I thought seeing Richard would bring me closure. Maybe to Richard I was just a pastime when he was bored, maybe just an object to satisfy his possessiveness. But when you fall in love at first sight, seeing that person again always brings a stir in your heart. I hid in the study, trying to recall everything related to Richard, but memories were fading. I looked at the bottle of perfume on the table. The table, Richard's favorite scent, now empty, and I couldn't afford a new one. The distant sound of shouting and commotion outside the door gave me a splitting headache. Someone burst into my room shouting, Trash everything. Leave nothing behind. Get this woman out of here. I jumped up in shock. I instantly understood what was happening. I begged them not to destroy the things in my study. I even knelt down and begged them to have some mercy. This was my last remaining plea in this world. But they didn't listen. They dragged me across the broken floor, kicking me away disdainfully. The floor turned red, but I didn't feel pain. I just felt a deep regret, realizing that my fantasies about Richard were shattered. And those people were sent by Richard. Clutching the empty perfume bottle in my hand, I walked silently on the street. It was the only thing I managed to snatch back. After a moment's thought, I went to a restroom near the mall to tidy up, trying to appear less disheveled. Then I took a taxi to the hospital. After taking a deep breath to compose myself, I pushed open the door to the ward and walked straight to my mother. "Mom, you're not asleep yet?" The wrinkles on her face formed a smile instantly. She turned to the patient next to her bed and jokingly said, "Your daughter is mistaking me for her mother again." Then she turned to me. "Anna, this is your real mom. Why does this pretty girl always want to take me as her mother?" My mother laughed heartily. My embarrassed expression seemed somewhat forced. "Sorry, it was too dark outside. I couldn't recognize you properly." My mother's expression didn't seem cheerful. Instead, she looked at me with concern, a weighty look in her eyes. I quickly smiled, joking, "Even Mom mistook me. Next time, Anna will be more careful." But Mom didn't seem pleased. Instead, she removed the blood oxygen monitor from her finger, tremblingly taking me to the corridor. Before she could speak, tears started to stream down her face uncontrollably. "Anna, can you please not come here anymore? Listen to me, I know very well I don't have many days left." Her hands, like dry branches, trembled as she held onto mine. "I'm begging you, don't spend more money on me." I was speechless for a moment. The corridor was dimly lit, and I couldn't tell if my mother's expression conveyed despair or helplessness. I quickly wiped away her tears. "Why are you saying that? I have money. I'm a big star, Anna. I'm swimming in cash. Don't talk like that. You will be around for a long time." My mother fell silent, staring at me for a long time. I tried to smile brightly, but sometimes a single sentence can shatter someone's carefully constructed facade. "I know everything. Mom took care of you for over a decade. I know everything, including you." After settling the hospital expenses for my mother, I left the hospital. My mother had been a maid in Richard's house for over a decade. Richard's parents treated me only as Richard's plaything, never looking at me straight in the eyes. I always believed that my mother was a blessing from heaven and picked to be my family. That's why I needed money by any means necessary. Dressed in scanty clothes, I danced in the center of the club in a confused frenzy. The night was a blur of luxury and indulgence, and I was just a plaything to please the elite with no dignity. Coins showered down on me and I scrambled to pick them up, knowing each coin was a lifeline for my mother. I sensed that the former big star, Anna, was groveling on the floor for $100. I didn't hear what they were saying until a familiar scent filled the air. I sat on the floor holding onto the money and looked up blankly at Richard. But all he had for me was mockery in his eyes. He didn't even spare me a glance, saying, "Anna, after raising you for over a decade, I can still take everything away from you." I remained expressionless as everything I had was gone since the day Richard had a car accident. He stepped on the money in my hand and my wrist, his voice cold as if it could penetrate me. "Things that don't belong to you don't take." He stepped hard. My palm was already devoid of any color, but I had no intention of compromising. I couldn't lose my mom again. I stared at Richard blankly. "Want it?" Richard's tone was sarcastic. "Then kneel down and beg me." As soon as he finished speaking, my knees, which were half crouching, touched the ground, making a crisp sound. I looked up at Richard and smiled sincerely. "Please, Richard." "Damn it." I heard Richard curse under his breath through gritted teeth. He turned around, roaring at the people who had just mocked me. "All of you get lost." Then he left without looking back. The bar suddenly fell silent and I danced all night. That night I couldn't see the faces of the audience. All I could see was Richard from my memory. When I first transferred and was bullied, it was Richard who carried me out of the mess room in the junior high department. Ignoring the paint and water stains on my body, he carried me all the way back home. He said, "Anna, don't be afraid." In that moment, even if the sky fell, I wasn't afraid. Today is similar to that scene back then, except this time Richard has become the one humiliating me. I remembered one more thing about Richard. After that day, no one in the bar ever bothered me again. I rented a new place and barely gathered enough money to cover my mom's recent expenses. I was planning to continue living aimlessly, but I met someone on my way to work. I nervously fidgeted with the notebook in my pocket and looked at the approaching person. Judging from her expression, she was coming towards me. "Anna, what did you say to Richard?" Clearly, he wasn't like this before. As she raised her hand to slap me, I instinctively took a step back. My reaction seemed slower than I expected, as her manicured nails left a fiery red mark on my face. Who is she? That was my first thought. You've been clinging on to Richard for over a decade. Isn't that enough? Everyone knows Richard is mine. Who do you think you are trying to be, his girlfriend? What have you done to be with Richard? She was so intimidating. I took 2 steps back, furrowing my brow and asking, "Who are you?" The newcomer looked confused. "Anna, are you crazy? Richard isn't here. Stop using your tricks on me." Silently, I took out the small notebook from my pocket and casually glanced at the first page. Then I looked up at her and softly said, "Nancy." She dared to call my name, snarling, "You? Who gave you the right to call me by my name? You got me wrong." Her eyes widened when I said, "Nancy, are you coming apart at the seams?" Nancy's pupils dilated instantly. Despite being an actress, she failed to conceal her shock. What nonsense are you spouting, Anna?" With a single phrase, Nancy's eyes narrowed to slits. "Anna, what do you know?" "I know everything. But sometimes the truth doesn't have to be made public. The so-called truth might be my last fig leaf." Without directly answering Nancy's question, I just said, "Nancy, I will be fine for being late for work." Yet with just those words, I saw an indescribable fear on Nancy's face. Suddenly, the familiar scent of cedar behind me flooded my nostrils. I suppose at that moment my expression was probably no different from Nancy's. "Anna, what do you know?" This sentence was said by Richard. Despite the absurdity of what I had just said, I casually told Richard, "I left you because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life with someone with a disability." Knowing Richard, a proud man, he would not pursue the matter further. As a matter of fact, Richard disappeared slowly with his arm around Nancy's waist in front of me, leaving behind the words, "Rare to see an unlucky person." It hurt even more than the day of the car accident. I walked aimlessly, suddenly forgetting where I worked. I flipped through the notebook, which was filled with things related to Richard. The people in the flower shop cursed at me, telling me to leave, saying I don't work there. I quickly apologized and left with my head down. My phone rang. Taking out my phone, I felt the still bulging pocket. The realization suddenly hit me that today was the day to pay for my mom's medical expenses at the hospital, and I had finally gathered enough money. Pressing the answer button, I smiled as I put the phone to my ear. "Anna, your mom couldn't be saved." What does he mean by couldn't be saved? I had just managed to gather the money. Clutching the thick stack of bills in my hand, I trembled uncontrollably. I no longer had a mom. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, too overwhelmed for tears to fall. Am I really a jinx destined to be abandoned by everyone? Should I have died in that car accident over a decade ago? At my mom's funeral, Richard was also there. But surrounded by Richard's friends, they all seemed familiar to me, but I couldn't recall any of their names. There was a woman who kept clinging to Richard continuously. It made my heart ache, so I just stopped looking. A cold and harsh voice suddenly sounded in my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. "Such a good pretender, Anna. Stop faking tears. You don't deserve it." Yes, in Richard's eyes, I was a complete traitor, disgusting to him. I clenched my hands, pretending not to hear. Suddenly, memories of the bloody car accident scene from over a decade ago flooded my mind. I stood there all alone with the doll in my arms. Richard gently covered my eyes and said, "Anna, don't cry. I'll take you away. Now there's only me left in this world. No one will take me away anymore." Richard is still lingering by my side. He lowered his head for a moment, then teasingly asked, "What about the ring on your ring finger?" I was a bit puzzled as I didn't remember having any ring. I thought Richard wanted to reclaim something that belonged to him. Ring? What ring? You didn't give me a ring, did you? I hesitantly raised my question. Richard's forehead furrowed even deeper. "Anna, what are you saying?" Judging by Richard's reaction, I knew I might have said the wrong thing. "Nothing." I dared not to look into Richard's eyes before his expression turned even more ominous. I smiled and looked away. "What, Richard? You're still hung up on me like that?" Richard was taken aback for a moment, then sarcastically said, "Anna, you really have some nerve." After that incident, I never saw Richard again. I don't know what happened to the cerebrospinal fluid analysis report I had hidden for so long in the desk drawer. Probably got lost when I was kicked out earlier. Recalling it, the time of Richard's accident coincided with Nancy's return to the country, the day Richard took me to the airport to pick her up. When the car from the opposite direction crashed into our lane, all I could think of was my parents covered in blood when I was little. It was like a reflex. I instinctively threw myself towards the driver's seat where Richard was. All I could think about was that I didn't want to see Richard lying in a pool of blood. That day, I clearly saw Nancy in the other car. She seemed very panicked and drove away from the scene. In the end, I shielded Richard's upper body. The car's deformation crushed my kidney, and I lay in the ER for a long time. Now the spot where my right kidney used to be is empty. When I woke up, Richard was still unconscious due to the impact of the sudden braking. The doctor said he might lose the memory of the accident, and that the chances of his legs recovering from the compression were slim. I laughed and cried. Luckily, Richard didn't die. But when the doctor, wearing a solemn expression, looked at the cerebrospinal fluid analysis report, my smile faded. He said, "I have familial Alzheimer's disease." "What?" I repeatedly confirmed. "Isn't this disease common in older people?" "Sounds so absurd. In theory it's rare, but we have discovered a few cases with genetic factors." I don't remember what he said after that. So it turns out that I couldn't retain the financial knowledge Richard taught me, not because I was stupid. When my grandmother rushed over after the accident, the first thing she did was slap me hard and blame me for being the one who lived, not my brother. She went crazy, ranting about why it was me who survived, not my brother. She said I brought death upon the whole family, cursed, and why I didn't die instead. I just cried and shrank back. No one with blood relations was willing to take me in just because I was the one who survived. In the end, did that mean I had to die? Did even fate think I should die, thus fulfilling my grandmother's curse? He cried. A tear so big rolled down from the corner of his eye which startled me. I quickly got up and moved the chair aside. I'm sorry. I instinctively nodded and bowed. Did I say something wrong? I'm really sorry. His hands seemed to tremble even harder. The man opened his lips as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't speak. He was gripping his hand so tightly that his nails were almost digging into his flesh. I furrowed my brow and approached him with kindness, patting his hand. Don't squeeze too hard. It will hurt. I didn't know why he was being so extreme, why hurt himself for no reason. As I got closer to him, I involuntarily wrinkled my nose. Such a familiar scent. I looked into his eyes and suddenly saw stars twinkling in them. I turned back and took a few steps, picked up the empty bottle on the wooden table, lowered my head to smell it and laughed happily. Your scent is just like it. I like the way you smell. The perfume bottle I was holding looked very fancy, customized with 2 words engraved on it. Richard. His eyes were fixed on the bottle in my hand, his stubborn look making me a little scared. I quickly hid it behind my back. Do you know me? Sorry, I scratched my head. But I really can't remember. I looked up at him. He was too tall and my neck was getting tired. He fell silent for a while, then averted his gaze. I don't know. But it seemed like his eye sockets had turned even redder. Since you don't know me, I couldn't be bothered. And I walked out by myself as soon as the sun went down. Where are you going? He followed me. I turned to him, smiling, and said, I'm going home to see. I go home every day. I'm not an unwanted child. I'll take you. No need. I don't have money to give you. I quickened my pace. I felt he was a bad person, so I ignored him. When I arrived, he seemed even quieter than before. The living room was littered with broken glass, battered furniture, and dried blood stains. Is this your home? I shook my head and pushed open the door to the study. This is my home. I looked at the mess in the study, smiled, and welcomed him. Take a seat wherever you like. There didn't seem to be any place to sit. I'm sorry, I scratched my head and habitually apologized. I used to live here, but a group of people beat me up and kicked me out. I begged them really, but it was no use. I smiled at him. This person who had been staring at me since we met suddenly turned away. His eye sockets were red again. I couldn't figure it out, so I just squatted down to start tidying up. A small notebook fell out of my pocket. I quickly picked it up and patted off the dust as if it were a treasure. His gaze fell on me again. I heard a hoarse and almost inaudible voice say, Can I have a look? No. I said, scared, quickly tucking it into my arms. I looked at this stranger with a hostile gaze. There are important things in it. I can't lose it. I won't look, don't worry. But he looked even more haggard than me. Every day someone comes to talk to me. I'm not sure if it's one person, but they all have the same scent. Let me tell you a secret. I like someone. His name is Richard. But I can't see him anymore. He doesn't like me, he likes someone else. I fiddled with the bottle with Richard written on it, talking to myself. But suddenly he looked at me with a determined gaze. He said, Richard has always only liked Anna. I looked up at him blankly, gazing at him. Who is Anna? Why does Richard like her? Why doesn't he like me? Oh, how can I be a match? I'm just a jinx. I smiled at him, but suddenly a pair of arms hugged me tightly, and I didn't push away or resist. The faint scent of tobacco mixed with cedar wood rolled into my nostrils. I don't know why, but I felt like crying. I'm sorry, Anna. His voice sounded by my ears somewhat unreal. I opened my mouth in his embrace. Thank you. And the next sentence, Richard's mouth moved, but no sound came out. And later on, Richard still came every day, but he never saw Anna again. He just sat quietly on the little chair where Anna used to stay, flipping through that small notebook all day. It was not big, but it was densely packed with him. Richard's epilogue. The first time I saw Anna, she was kneeling by the roadside, holding a bloodstained doll being beaten. In those doll-like big eyes there was a despair and fear that a person of that age should not have. I've never seen such a desolate and timid appearance on anyone else. I wanted to take her home. It must be interesting. I didn't know what Anna had been through before. Everything scared her. Even when I held her hand, she looked at me with fear. I liked her hiding behind me, but no one could bully her. When I carried her out of the cluttered room, I couldn't wait to kill those beasts who didn't know any better. Anna was in my arms, full of wounds, but only worried about dirtying my clothes. Her fearful yet caring eyes I still remember till now. I wanted her to be bright and independent, to be herself without fear. I stepped out of Anna's comfort zone. Through money to let her enter the entertainment industry, I watched Anna transform from a timid girl into a confident and flamboyant star. I think I will always be there to support this little girl. On the day I brought Anna to meet Nancy, I had been planning for a year. It was a proposal. Friends said Nancy would make Anna feel threatened, creating a bigger proposal surprise. Yes, I have always known the love stories circulating in the industry, but I never explained it to Anna. I thought after more than a decade of being together, Anna would understand what she meant to me. But I forgot about her bloody and horrifying past, something too unbearable to face. She couldn't believe anyone. She didn't even believe that someone in this world could really love her. I was wrong. During the time we were together, I loved her in my own way, but I never said those 3 words to her. The day Anna left was the darkest day of my life. I always thought I was Anna's support, but I never realized I couldn't live without her. I couldn't believe that the girl I had raised for over a decade would leave so decisively. It wasn't until I heard it from her own lips. The feelings of helplessness and humiliation instantly overwhelmed my senses. I fought the urge to hold her in my arms and take her away, cutting off almost all of her retreats. I thought when there's no way out, it's time to go home. But I underestimated her stubbornness. I knew she was timid, but I never thought she could be so fierce when she set her mind. I was powerless. When I saw Anna kneeling down for money, I almost choked. I couldn't bear to watch, afraid that my eyes would turn red the next second. I had to turn around and leave in frustration. I couldn't understand why she stopped loving me. My leg had already healed. It was a long time after I saw the test report. I bought Anna's rental house before, but I never had the courage to visit. I wanted to know the truth, yet I was afraid of knowing it. That report, along with all my belongings in that room, left me breathless. I tore my own raised flowers apart, trampling them back into the mud. I found out the truth. Every word in Anna's notebook was about me. She never blamed me. I let her out of hell and cast her back in with my own hands. Later, I learned that Anna kept things about me to slowly forget me, but she could no longer hear my overflowing affection.